Hello, I'm going to show you how to install a CarTech Studio head unit in the Honda 2017 CRV. Before you start the removal process of the climate control module and the old head unit, you need to put the car in accessory mode. Do that by pressing the start button without your foot on the brake. And next, you want to engage the parking brake by pulling it up. It's very important to engage the parking brake because when you shift the shift lever into low to make space to remove the radio, the car will move. So you need to be very careful that you put the brake on, and you may want to chock one of your wheels as an extra precaution. Put your foot on the brake, pull the shift lever back to the low position. Put a blanket or heavy cloth over the area, and then we'll proceed to take out the old unit. Okay, so the first thing to do is to take off the climate control module, and I've got a hammer. You can use some kind of pry tool, but to make sure that you wrap it in something to protect your dash, and you're just going to clip that in there. You can hear it pop very gently. On the other side, same thing. And then you can remove the climate control. Now there's a short connector right underneath that you have to get in and disconnect. You can't pull this out too far. Once you disconnect it, that unit will come out, and you can see the cable that I removed here. And you'll see at the bottom here, there's two screws holding in a bracket. You have to undo those two screws. It's the same process for the screen. Pop that out, and then the unit will come out. You can rest it here on your shift, protected by your blanket, and then proceed to disconnect all the cables that are connected to the unit. And I will disconnect those now and come back. The old unit is now removed, and you can see the connector harnesses that are from the factory. I did put in some cables. I put in the antenna cable that comes with the kit. I put in the USB connectors. You can see that those are connected to those green and gray plugs there. I put in the GPS antenna, which I've mounted. You can see that I've mounted this on top of that plate there under the dash. And now we will proceed with installing the new unit. Okay, here are the components that came in the CarTech kit. We have the head unit itself. We have the screen, wiring harness. These are made to fit only in the original factory connectors, so you really can't make a mistake on this. This is the power connector that goes in the back of the unit. Before installation, you need to attach the mounting bracket, which gets screwed into the top of the unit. There are also side brackets that are included in the kit, but they are not needed here. The next thing is to mount these plastic mounts for the screen. There's 4 of them. They need to be oriented as shown. And remember, when tightening these screws, they're small screws. You want to snug them down lightly. Over tightening them will crack the plastic, and then you will destroy your mount. You will also need to mount the plastic mounts for the display, and as you can see, they're very similar to the other mounts. They have screws. You need to evenly space these in the center of the unit. Remove the plastic white clips that came with your factory unit and install those in these 4 areas in the corners. They just slide off and slide back on. You might have to pry them up with a screwdriver, but they should slide off. Next, connect the cable harness to the display unit. You can see the notch in the center that needs to line up with the notch on the cable. It will be easier to connect your cables on the main system first before attaching the display. Once you've completed the cable installation and you've attached the display cable, then you can mount the display to the unit by plugging it into the mounts. Here is the new unit installed with the connectors from the factory. You see there's 3 main connectors. There's an antenna connector. There's actually 2 antenna connectors. One is here. You want to use this one. GPS antenna, which is mounted on this plate as I showed before. USB connectors are here, going into the gray and the green connector here. We have 5G wireless antenna. You can mount this. I've chose not to mount it. I'm just pushing it in the back, tucking the wires down before I finally mount the unit. And then you have the connector at the bottom here, which is for your climate control. So this is all set. You can see that everything's connected. I did add a front HD camera, which is this connector here. And this cable is run through the firewall to the front grille. I'll show you that later. But as you can see, with the power on, the unit is in setup mode. And once I get it installed, we'll talk more about how to configure it. The CRV contains the radio module mounted in the back passenger side rear quarter panel. So this needs to be removed. In order to do that, there are 2 clips at the bottom to remove this panel here. You pull up this plastic cover, remove the cover, remove the screw underneath, and this will remove the piece that holds it together. You do the same on the opposite side, and then you pull this cover piece out. Push this panel towards the back and remove it. To get the panel off, there's a little door. You push down this tab, open up this door, and remove the 2 screws that are above the handle. Next, remove the weather stripping around the door by gently pulling it away. At the bottom, there's a cover panel that needs to be pried up. You just pull gently on this. Remove the spare tire cover panel and then pull up on this back piece. Remove that. And then there are 2 plastic holders here, and you need to remove both of those. Pull the weather stripping away from the panel and then gently pull on the panel until it starts to release from the clips that hold it in place. You're going to do this all the way across and towards the doorway and at the doorway. This is almost released from these tabs. A couple more to go. There's a cable here you want to unclip and then remove the rest of the panel. There's the seat hook that it has to come over, as you can see in the middle. You have to work it over that piece and then remove it. Once the panel is separated from its mounting, there's a connector here for the lights. You want to disconnect this, and then you'll be able to move the panel out of the way. And behind the panel, mounted up in here, is the radio module. These are the 3 connectors that have been removed from the radio module. Next, we will install the provided harness and connect this to those 3 connectors. Here is the wiring harness installed to the 3 connectors. This connector, I feel, comes apart fairly easily, so I'm going to put a piece of electrical tape around it to secure it. This is now secured, so that won't come apart. You don't want to have to take the panel off again. If that connector were to come apart, you would get no radio reception. So this is just precaution, so that doesn't happen. With the wiring harness now in place, we will reinstall back panel. You can see the attachment points, these plastic clips, and you need to make sure that these did not get moved during disassembly. Make sure the clip is in the center of its mounting point, and you will see these clips in various places. Some are yellow, some are green. If you completely remove the seat release, reinstall it and snap it into the clips. Reconnect the light connector. This shows the routing of the seat release cable and where it clips into the panel. And then position the panel close to the chassis or the seat clip through the hole in the panel, and then push it into place. It does take some effort to get the cover over this bracket. You just have to work at it and push down at the top and get this bottom as close to the bottom as possible, and just work it until you can get that bracket in. Once the bracket is in, then everything else will line up, and at that point you're just going to press on the panel and seat those mounting points. You should feel them snap in and clip, and you're going to do that all the way around the panel until it's secure. To complete the installation of the rear panel, there are 2 rubber mounting pins, and those need to go in the holes here. Push them in firmly, and here. Next, take the 2 screws that you removed and put those into the yellow mounts that you see behind the door handle. Lastly, reinstall the door cover. Next, reinstall the rear tire cover panel mount. Just push down until it snaps in place. And then the accessory panel. And then put back the spare tire cover, and this completes the reinstallation of the rear panels. In order to replace the factory microphone with the microphone that's provided in the kit, you need to remove the console and partially the ceiling panel on the driver's side. The microphone is located in a compartment above my thumb here on the left-hand side. There are 4 screws holding this in place. You can see 2 screw holes here if you swing down the mirror, and then there are 2 more screws located within the lights. You have to remove the plastic covers on the lights. Be careful doing this. They are very delicate. They just come straight down. You have to pry them out with a small screwdriver. And then you can take this down, remove all the cables, and remove the module, old microphone module. To get access to wiring the microphone down the side pillar and under the dash so you can get it into the back of the unit, the head unit, you have to remove the pillar by unsnapping it, remove the weather stripping like we did with the rear panel, remove the visor. To remove the visor, you need to push in this tab that's holding the visor in place. I found using this bent pick was an easier way to get this tab to be pushed, as it takes quite a bit of pressure to move this tab in. Once you move the tab in, turn the visor towards the window and it should release. You can see now that that tab is pushed towards the right, and you can see some open space now, and the unit will drop down. Using a small screwdriver, pry the cap off the door handle holder and pull it towards you. Then, using a needle nose pliers, squeeze the tabs on the mount and pull forward. To uninstall and install the side curtain pillar airbag cover, it has two mounting pins located in the middle and bottom half of the panel and a slot at the top. The slot at the top matches up with the square red mounting. When you uninstall it, you disengage at the bottom and then slightly pull up to disengage it from that red mounting tab. Once you remove those components, you'll be able to pull the ceiling down away from its mounts just gently enough to get the microphone wire in place. And then run the wire. You can just feed it up in front of the windshield so it rests inside the foam. And then you're going to bring it down the pillar and down under the dash. The microphone wire is now run up in the ceiling panel. I've attached it to the visor connector just to hold it in place, and then attached it to this wiring harness here with tie wraps. That just goes down behind the dash, and then the wire is run underneath the steering wheel. You can secure it pretty much any way you want as long as it doesn't get caught on anything, and then up to where the radio is. The top mounting clip needs to be removed and put in the side panel before reinstalling. To remove the clip, insert a pair of needle nose pliers and push the top and bottom tabs outward and pull the clip forward. Once removed, it needs to be slid into the slot on the panel and snapped into place. To reinstall it, just do it in reverse. Engage the red mounting tab first, push the unit all the way down, and then snap the yellow pins in place. Once the microphone has been installed to the ceiling console, replug in the cables and then lay the microphone into the area that the old microphone was removed. You can tape the microphone in place to keep it from moving when you reinstall the console. Next, we will have to reinstall the visor, the handle over the door, and the pillar. Two steel clips. You just insert them and push them in place. The covers are inserted. Reconnect the visor electrical connector. Push it into place. Once in place, turn the visor towards the windshield to clip it into place. Then insert the visor clip holder. Reinstall the center console by pushing it in place. And then screwing in the 4 screws that were removed when it was removed. One here, here, and here. Lastly, reinstall the weather stripping around the door. The head unit supports a high-definition front camera, so I decided to install one. You get the benefit of having online video while you're on the road, and it will store inside the head unit so that if you ever have an incident, you can have video. This is what the camera looks like after installation. I ran the camera wire from the head unit into the boot that goes through the firewall. You can see that I cut a small hole in the boot well away from the wires that are in the wiring harness that go through the firewall. It's very important not to use any power tools here, as you don't want to take the risk of drilling into or cutting into those wiring harness. The cable comes through the rubber boot right next to the wiring harness. So you need to be over to the right side of it or the top of it, and you cut a little cross with a small knife and penetrate through the boot. You can run the wire anywhere along the way here. You can see it here, up and around. You can see it's tie wrapped there, and just up to the front where the camera is mounted. I chose to mount my camera right inside the Honda emblem. I drilled a hole behind the camera to run the wire. I mounted the camera using a hot glue. You can use an epoxy or any type of glue that's good for plastic. Now that the installation is complete, we'll take a look at the configuration. This is the default screen from the factory. There are 3 user interfaces to choose from. I choose interface number 2 because I like the way you could customize it and make it to your liking. To change the interface mode, go to Settings, System Application, which is highlighted, and then go to Theme. Select UI1, UI2, or UI3. I selected UI2, and this is the screen that I've configured. You can move around the apps and put them where you want. In this case, I put all my common apps that I use all the time on the left-hand side, and other apps that I don't use as often in the middle. The system has many settings. There are a lot of parameters that can be changed, and I'm not going to go through all of them. It would take way too long. There are instructions that come with the unit, and there's also instructions that are embedded in the unit. On the default screen on the right-hand side, you will see the instructions. You can click on that, and that will give you a basis of quite a few menus and what they do. I will, however, point out a few of the things that helped me in configuring the system to get it working correctly. First, under Settings, Common, you can set what application you want on startup. In this case, I selected Z-Link because that's where Android Auto is configured. Since I'm using Android Auto for navigation, I have turned off Navi-Start automatically. The navigation inside the unit needs to be configured by downloading Google Maps or Waze or a similar GPS program. I've chosen to use Android Auto, and it connects automatically to my phone through Bluetooth. If I hit Z-Link, Android Auto is configured. Once it's configured, and you set the app to start automatically, when you enter your vehicle and start the vehicle, as long as your phone has Bluetooth and wireless turned on, it will automatically start Android Auto. Another important setting that you need to configure is the radio antenna switch. The Honda CRV uses an active antenna which requires 12 volts power applied to it. You must turn on this switch, otherwise you will have terrible radio reception. The head unit also provides DVR application. In this case, I've set the DVR application AR camera. This is the front camera, and it will record while you're traveling on the road. Another important setting is to be able to change from metric to imperial on your car's dash and the climate control. To set that, you go to Original Car Set at the bottom of this menu in the Common Settings. Scroll down until you hit Unit Settings. Unit Set. And then you can set your temperature, your speed, your oil unit, and your tire pressure. There are also many settings in the system settings under Factory Settings. In order to access this menu, enter 8888, and that brings you into the Settings menu. There are many, many settings in here that can be changed. This, I believe, should say function, not faction. I think that's a typo. But there are many things in here that can be set. You want to be careful about just setting too many things at once. If the unit starts acting in a way that you weren't expecting, you may have hit a setting and you won't remember which one it was if you hit too many at the same time. I would suggest trying things one at a time and also reading the manual to get more familiar with the unit. This concludes my installation video of the CarTech Studio head unit for 2017 to 2022 Honda CRVs. Thank you for watching, and I hope it helps. And good luck in your own installation.